Welcome to our September edition at Power Hour. I am Tessa and outside Indianapolis, Indiana, joined by Meggan Jax out in Phoenix, Arizona. And tonight we are going to create two layouts with you. And I'm going to go first. I'm going to switch to my table and see how bad the Zoom messed up yeah, see, this is horrible. It was zoomed in. I don't know how to fix this. Let's bring it down. It always messes up my Zoom. And I have yet to figure out how to fix that. It was zoomed in very tightly before this. This is going to be awkward. Hold on. We probably should have done this before I started recording.
We got to chatting.
No, I know. Well, it was zoomed in. I had it. This is going to be in front of my face by the time we come back. I don't know how to fix this. It did not used to be a problem. Unless I start using my phone again. Oh,
That looks pretty good.
Slightly.
Well, you were fine before.
It was a little crooked. I think that's better. Okay.
Okay.
But so you still see the mess up there. Just ignore that mess. Everything around me is a hot mess, as you can imagine from being gone. And when we did this at the advisory retreat, I took all of my lights. So I had to completely set up my things today. So this layout used 8x8 papers. You don't have to use 8x8 papers, but you will want to cut them down. I used the 8x8 Noteworthy pack. This is one example that I used. I went through the entire pack actually. You are going to need 4 8x8 sheets of paper. 2 of them will need to be the same, and then you want 2 of them to be different, and you are going to use front and back. So tonight it is going to be a little of a challenge for me to pull mine together. I was thinking about it too late to change paper packs of how I'm going to work it out. Here is another example I made with craft as the base. And again, these were Noteworthy 8x8 papers cut down. And then this was the third one I used with corn flour as the base and Noteworthy. I twisted them all a little bit of that one. So tonight I thought I would choose Wonderful Day. It's an 8x8 pack. And the challenge coming in is that it's easy to pick out papers I want. For with Wonderful Day, the back side of these are the gray tones. And so to use both sides of the paper is a little challenging. But I am determined to make it work and figure out how to make it work. So, or if you can't figure out how to make the front and back work, then you could obviously just cut up more papers and we'll try it and see. So I had picked out a few options for base papers. I have brown shimmer that would be fun to use. This is a paper from the Wonderful Day 12x12 paper pack. I also have some beige cardstock. I originally wanted to use these as the two that are the same. So there will be one on each side of it. And then I'm going to show you on the handout layout where the papers are falling. So you can see this blue and the green. No, the blue and this are the same color, same front and back. And then so the back of the green is this color right here. So these are two different papers. So you all love it when we pick out paper. So we're going to figure this out and see if I can make it work together. So there's a lot of fun patterns in here. I have to figure out which of the backside will work. The fleur de lis is a gray tone, but that would give me a little bit of a print to sit beside this. I also liked this one. So obviously it's going to be pretty monochromatic. It gives me a darker base. I think that one's probably going to be easier to use. And if I used those, I was thinking maybe I could get away with using this as my base paper. It's pretty light, but I could have some contrast, or I could flip it. And I'm going to have polka dots on the back. But this color down here is going to fade a little bit, but that's an option. And then I would need one more. I got some stripes. The back of that's probably too gray. The noteworthy was super easy because all the papers worked well together. I picked a hard pack, but I haven't used Wonderful Day very much. I could use this one and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. If I don't like it and you guys agree, then we'll just figure it out how to change it. I could also work in a little bit of brown shimmer. So I need the two papers that I'm going to be cutting. And I'm going to leave these off to the side just so I can think about how the papers flow a little bit. You're going to need your Picket Fence BMC. It comes with every border maker system unless you got the one with the cupcake. If you got that blue one with the cupcake, then you don't have the Picket Fence. Would have to get it separately. We're going to punch both sides of these papers. And for orientation to the print, one of them is going to become this blue. So it's like a tall vertical piece, if it matters with your direction. And the other one's going to be going across the bottom. And I might want to turn it for that. So I think I will use, I'm going to use this one. Is that what I decided? Oh, decisions. No, I'm going to use this one as the blue one that you see on the handout. I'm going to punch both sides. And I'm going to do it so that my pattern will sit like this on the page. If you don't want to use Picket Fence, you can find another one that has a little bit of an edge pattern, or you could use a decorative blade because really I'm just using the very edge of the design. But I like how the Picket gives me more of a peak than just my decorative blade. And I'm going to punch the other one. I'm going to think about this one. I do have this a little bit of a stripe on the back, so I'm going to think about the way this one's going to sit. The back side of the green is just going to flip when I cut it. So I want my strip to be cut like this. So I'm going to turn it at 90 degrees. So I'll cut it so this side's up. You're going to have a long skinny strip. So I'm going to cut across this print after I punch it. So I'm going to punch it first. If the paper choices get too tough for you, choose a paper pack to play with where everything coordinates together. I almost pulled out Birthday Jubilee. In hindsight, it probably would have been a better choice for that. You're going to need your trimmer. So I'm going to go back to the one that I'm replacing the blue with on the handout, and I'm going to cut off the pickets at 1 inch. Then I want to cut two 5/8 of an inch strips. So remember the 1/2 inch mark is 4/8. And then you're going to have a little line, and the next longer line is 5/8. I need two of those. And then what you have left, you want to cut in half, and it should be about 4.5 inches left. So we're going to cut that in half at 2.25. I'm going to go ahead and skip the next step. We'll come back to that. I'm going to go ahead and finish with my trimmer. So I want to cut this paper in half, and it should be about 3 7/8 because it's not 4 inches, it was 8 inches, half of that would be 4 inches, but because of what we lose punching it, that's what makes it a little bit shorter. And 7/8, again, you have the 4/8 is in the middle, you skip a little one, that's 5, skip a little one, that's 6. And then the next one is the 7/8, skip a little one, then you have 7/8 is right before the 4. And you kind of eyeball it, make sure it looks pretty even. I'm going to cut that in half, and then I'm going to cut a 3/4 inch strip off each side. Gives me all the pieces I need. So I'm going to go back to the third step, and I'm going to pull the papers that I'm using without cutting, and I'm going to adhere the pickets to one side. And before you adhere, if you're not confident yet, we could dry fit this a little bit if you kind of want to see where it's going to end up first. It might be helpful, then you can decide, do you like your papers, do you not? I could start this side, I could use this print with the words. And this one, I'll use the polka dots, and then maybe we could vote and see what you guys think. It is a lot of monochromatic, and this is one of those layouts in the end would look better once it has its photos on here. But the pickets are going to sit behind the paper like that. My other option is the darker side, which is really going to fade into the polka dots. Maybe I want the darker side over here. Pop more with the words. Then I have the printed paper, or I could also flip it for the dark side. I'm going to end up adhering strips to these, but here I have that print. On this side, the dark kind of blends in, but I could do the one that's a little taupier. The 5/8 of an inch strips that we cut are going to cover up the pickets. And then we have the extra strips where you could choose. I like the print, or maybe I like the darker. I don't have photos, so this is just for fun. If I were using a matte color, then I could maybe pull out my bronze shimmer, which would really pop against either of these. I could also use maybe like an ivory shimmer. So now I have to decide which one I like better. People are saying the dark side. And then now we're all going to talk about Star Wars. I can go with the dark side. I will say I actually do think I like this side better, but I'm pretty confident that it doesn't show up the same on paper because you probably can't see a lot of the subtlety in the print. It is kind of a lighter neutral wood. I could also just glue them both down and not have a 2-page layout, which would be fine also. Maybe I'll just do that. I'll just make unmatching pages, and then I could just make either make the whole thing again, or I can make a companion page with them. So I'll go with that. I'll just make both sides. So to go back to the adhering, I need to adhere this paper to the picket. I got some repo tape. Actually, I saw my border one earlier. I lose my border silicone all the time, and I found it in my trimmer bag earlier. So I'm adhering the pickets underneath that side right there. I have seen some really pretty layouts with Wonderful Day. And again, I have no idea what I'm going to put on these layouts, but I did want to play with it. I'm a little late to the game sometimes when it comes to playing with paper. Okay, now I have that adhered. I'm going to adhere. I'm going to adhere these pieces together. And this strip, you can leave some spacing. You can also wait to adhere this and after you decide how far up you want to tuck it under the layout. I'm going to adhere this piece 1/2 inch from the top and 1/2 inch from the left side of the paper. So I'm going to make sure my base paper is centered on the mat. When we taught this in person, it's interesting. Megan and I aren't the best people for teaching live because we're not used to actually having to like keep everyone caught up with us. But to make it easier on us, I gave everyone the same pack of paper. And so there was only 3 choices and we didn't have random packs like this. Because we all know some of you can take longer to pick out your paper than you can actually make the layout. Same thing over here. The beige that I just pulled out also would make a good color for mat. It is a nice masculine layout. Father's Day for me, though, someone mentioned Father's Day, but usually for Father's Day, I use more outdoorsy because we're always outside, out back at my parents'. And so this year I used the NSD collection, the gardening one, because my dad was out there. Or maybe that was Mother's Day. Father's Day, he's usually busy grilling. Before I picked out Wonderful Day, I did debate Birthday Jubilee, but then I pulled out the On the Mend. I was actually debating trying to use those for like do a pet layout because there's some nice colors in there and I don't like our kitty set that has pink in it. But the awkwardness of that paper pack is there's a lot of like white base stripes in there, which were going to be a little bit much together. I want to tuck this piece, the decorative one, about 1 inch from the bottom and about 1.5 inches from this inside edge. And if you have photos and you're doing this with photos, then you might wait to kind of layer your photos with it. After I finish these, I'm going to pull my examples back out. We'll talk about that for a minute. And then I can adhere my final strip on top. I do find that usually everything works together with in the end, we debate about a lot of things. Sometimes if we just go with something, it mostly turns out okay because CM does make it so that most things in the collection do coordinate with each other. Just have to be a little intentional sometimes with the different prints. I'm gonna pull my T ruler out and make sure I'm getting this lined up across the bottom. And tuck a little bit of tape back up underneath there. And then adhere my final piece. And I was kind of trying to think on the fly. You guys will remember Wonderful Day had the borders and then they have the words. But did we actually have other embellishments like with icons? If not, I was thinking Legacy of Love would coordinate well with these papers, which is probably what I would go pull out to use. So there's my base layout. It's kind of unexciting, right? I mean, and sometimes that's how our bases look because in the end, our photos and the embellishments sometimes make the layout. So back to my original one, what this does over here is it gives you a place to create an embellishment cluster. So you can look through your stash and pull out a shape, like circle. We have a lot of straight lines here, a lot of rectangles. And so if you have another shape, like a circle or oval or a heart that you can cut something to soften that up, I would create your little embellishment cluster right there. Maybe you want to cut out a center sentiment out of a variety map and stick it down there. I did use a 4.5 by 6.5 mat here. I cut down my photo to fit, and then I cut these photos to fit on here. So I didn't mat these photos because they have a very strong definition of color against the lighter paper. And this strip I had here, I think just came out of my scraps. But I was pretty happy with Noteworthy. It had, just a little bit about the first day of school, which is when I took these pictures, obviously. And then same thing over here. I didn't use the circle, but the embellishments in the Noteworthy pack worked out well. And then, just add a little bit of sticker down there. And so the layout gives me a lot of texture and color. It works well for having several coordinating colors. And then let me grab the other one. And then I had printed these. Some of you may have seen my post. I think it was on my page when Emerson lost the key to her car for about 2 weeks. And so she was using my key fob. She finally turned her room upside down the day before she's go back to school. And I said, let me get you a key ring. Can you guys see the hit the road key ring? And so that's what she's using. I'm curious to see if she still has it, but hopefully that makes it harder for her to lose in a bag. So same thing for this one, but I rotated the layout. You notice that instead of this being along the bottom, it's on the left and the right now because it worked better with the photo. So my little pickets are along the top, giving me a little texture. I did the same thing with the mat here. It works so well. Why not repeat your idea? The title here, I did mat one photo over here with a Vista shimmer. But again, these photos are not matted. They're just on the paper itself. And then I added in the roundness back with the embellishments. A little tag, same thing in there. So I do look forward to seeing how you conquer the challenge of finding so many papers to coordinate together. And I agree, Kelly, the photos should be the star. And sometimes when you're just making blank layouts without any photos, it can be easy to want to dump a bunch of stuff on there. But sometimes you kind of got to wait to see how the photos are going to work. Before I give you to Megan, I can find, maybe I already lost it. Here it is. I was gonna show you what I mean on the mend. As you're looking through your papers to choose, this one was a little challenging because it had a lot of these white stripes, which are cute, but those are a little bit harder to mix stripes together. But the hearts in there, which, Megan and I aren't the biggest fan of hearts, but that's why I was thinking this would be cute for a pet. So if you have on the mend, maybe you don't want to do it for this layout, but this paper pack actually would be pretty cute, I think, if you also have cats and don't love the cat pack with pink in there. And then we also have like the sun soaked, I think it's sold out, but you can also cut down papers to 8x8. But sun soaked is one of those collections that you're going to have an easier time finding tonals and prints that work together. Like the Wonderful Day, where I really was kind of alternating between a gray tone and a brown tone. There are some of the 8x8 packs still left in last chance. So the biggest challenge is, and if you could do it with Noteworthy, like I said, is if you have an 8x8 pack and you want to use it up, you could get 6 layouts out of that one pack if you divide up the paper between 3 layouts. So that would be the ultimate challenge if any of you guys take it. Okay, well, Megan, 8:34 is not bad. Let's see if she's even paying attention. There she is. Of course she's paying attention.
Yes, I am paying attention. How dare you think I wouldn't pay attention? I do need to really quick though hand you host or co-host. So just a second, let me do that. I didn't want to do it in the middle of the class because it's annoying. It comes up on your screen. Anyway, so yes, I'm Meggan Jax, and welcome to September Power Hour. As Tessa mentioned, we already made these layouts before, and so that'll be a lot of fun to show you these. And I will admit my layout is probably maybe more like a Power 45, potentially. This one was, I probably made the worst layout to try to teach in person. I'm going to readily admit that. And we do definitely rely on the thing where you're saying, if you need to, just stop and watch and make the layout tomorrow or the next time you're cropping and just watch the video tonight. So I'm going to switch over here to my overhead camera and we will dive into my layout. So here we go. Here is the layout. You can see there are a lot of components to this, but Tessa also gave me these through the years paper packs are nice. They're a lot of fun. I've struggled a little bit. This layout, it worked okay putting the photos on, but it was a little interesting with the kind of the louder print with these smiley faces on there. So we're going to need a couple of base papers. The directions tell you need 2 pairs of matching paper. So in this, I used the Through the Years. I think this was the 80s and 90s pack. I used kind of the dark purple and the smiley face paper out of that. And for my example tonight, I'm going to be using the shades of Happy Hauntings. My base paper is going to be this purple. It has orange flecks in it. And then my secondary sheet is going to be this orange paper, has like light yellow flecks in it. So where you see the the purple here for the background, I'm going to be using the dark purple, and this orange paper is going to be where you see the smiley face. Now we do want to have an accent paper. A piece of cardstock works really well, or shimmer paper. In my sample, I used Island Waters. And this is going to be the paper that we punch. So we do want to see some nice contrast between our background paper and this, the cardstock. You can see here with the Island Waters, I can see that purple point popping through. So it really highlights the design. Now for the punch for this, we do want to use a knockout style punch because we're really going for this frame look, and it works really well with a knockout style. It also allows us to do the corner without too many difficulties. So I am going to be using Bats and Stars. It's a knockout punch. And so what I'm going to be looking for here is making sure I can see the bats poking through. Now, I might have a small problem with that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's going to be enough contrast. What I will be able to do is, if I need to, I can come in and use some scraps and pop some color behind it. I could maybe pop in a little bit of gold shimmer or white shimmer if I want to give those bats a little bit more definition if this purple doesn't show through. So that's what we're going with. One thing to note in the handout, I do talk about here, there is this step right here where we cut out the middle of this paper. And what that allows us to do is bring some of that background paper. So this kind of this grapey purple color comes forward, and I use it as mats. You can see down here, I show you how to cut it. So one thing to note here is if whether or not you like the bringing this darker purple forward, it will sit nicely on top of the orange. The other thing I will be able to do is the reverse side of it is also a good possibility. In fact, I think that's what I'm going to use. I will be cutting out this section and I'll flip that over and bring forward. It's a little bit more of that, like a crafty texture, like brown paper bag texture, but it's got a little bit of a yellow gold undertone to it. All right, so we're going to get started. We're going to start off with our punching of our cardstock or your shimmer paper. I do recommend using something a little bit more tonal. That's why I say the cardstock or shimmer, because it will allow whatever you punch. You don't have to, your punch design does not have to compete with your paper design. So I've got a sheet of the black shimmer. We're going to go ahead and start off by cutting it in half. I am going to use a decorative blade, so you'll want to have that handy. I'm going to use the decal blade with mine, but I'm going to start off by cutting this piece of paper in half at 6 inches. You do not need to use a decorative blade if you don't want to, but I am going to go ahead and do that. When you use a decorative blade and you're going to punch with a knockout style, you want to cut your paper with the decorative blade first and then punch. It is much easier to do that than it is to come back and punch and cut off a little bit after you've punched, especially with something like a bat and stars, which gets pretty close to the top edge of the paper, actually down here. So it's going to be definitely want to punch, or excuse me, cut with that decorative blade first. And as I mentioned, I'm going to use decal. I need to cut 3 sides of my paper. I'm going to cut the 1 long edge and the 2 short edges, and I'm going to cut off about 1/8 of an inch. My goal is just to make sure I get that decorative edge established. Now, just a quick reminder, when you're doing the decorative edges, you want to make sure you have a nice, firm, reasonable amount of pressure to cut it all the way in one stroke, just because it's really hard to go back and cut a second time. So I'm just going to go ahead and come around here. I'm taking roughly not quite 1/8 of an inch off. I think I lined it up at that 1/8 inch, which is that secondary dash to the right of the main cut line. And you're just going to go ahead and cut all those. Again, this step is optional. It does leave you with a little bit of that background paper kind of showing through. You can see there how I have a little bit of this peeking out at the top. If I didn't cut my paper, you could use a straight blade and just cut 1/8 of an inch off, or you don't have to cut it at all. I'm anxiously awaiting to see whether or not Creative Memory is going to have a little Halloween set. It will be fun to see whether they give us, we had Booyah last year. Just a quick reminder, once you're done with all of these cuts, put in your straight blade. So next up, we're going to go ahead and do our punching with the Border Maker system. As I mentioned before, I'm using the bats and stars. That is a knockout style. A knockout style, remember, stays attached to the paper and it only punches out the design. It does not alter the edge. Tessa used picket fence, and that is an edge style border punch. It stays attached, but it definitely cuts that outside edge. So knockout styles only punch out the decorative design without altering the edge, and the bats and stars is going to give me a bunch of little bats and stars punched out. Makes great confetti if you like those confetti cards. So here what I'm doing is I am working to center my paper. See, it's a little bit short, so I'm working to center my paper in my paper holder. And then I would punch all of the slots all the way down. There you can see I've punched the slots all the way down. Now I do need to rotate because I'm going to punch along this edge and I'm going to punch along this edge. So anywhere I cut with my decorative trimmer, I'm going to go, or with the decorative blade, I'm going to go ahead and punch those edges. Now to do that, I'm going to go ahead. I have my decorative punch facing away from me. I'm going to open up my paper holder, and I want to line my paper up with this line right here. When I talk about the first dark line on there, that's what I'm referring to, these dark lines. That one is the first one we want to line up. It should be about the 1 inch mark. And you want to put your paper, I think I say covering it up. You can kind of fiddle with that a little bit. It's going to depend on your punch. If this is a new technique for you, you might want to cut some scrap paper first. But we're also just cutting cardstock. So if you mess it up, it can be like a little bit like, oh, I could just grab another piece, put this in my scrap for making mats. So I've lined that up at that 1 inch, flipped it back. Now I'm not going to punch the first one. I have slots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to punch slot 2. So I want to have a gap up here. I don't want to punch that. I want to punch in slot 2. So 2, 3, and 4. 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to flip my paper over. So again, here's my decorative edge at the top, and I've got my unpunched side, and I'll repeat how I put it in my paper holder. And there we go. We've got our piece. Now we repeat those same steps with our second 6-inch piece, or it's roughly 6 inches. Center in your paper holder. Punch all the slots on the long side. Lots of bats. Line it up here. Punching in slots 2, 3, and 4. Now, how many of you would actually take the time and put these on your layout? Would you just do a few of them? Would you do quite a few of them? I'm just really curious because sometimes we've had some things where there's like little tiny details like that. Like, oh my gosh. The adhesive pin is really good for things like that. You could probably put almost a little dot on your paper and then just slap a few of those bats on there. All right, so I've got both pieces of my paper done. Now, one thing to consider, and you come back to my original layout, you can see here the sample. I do have a circle here, a circle mat that is cut from this piece of designer paper, or excuse me, of cardstock. Now this worked out. The circle worked really well here because I was pulling that circle theme from the cyclic circles. I had the smiley faces. So I was bringing in the circle into the layout. So you can do that if you want. If you want to go ahead and cut some circles, I'm going to go ahead and do just 2 of them, because if I do repeat the same concept, I will want to have those circles. And it's, this paper just gets covered up. So I might as well do that. We will use the blue blade on the outside track of the smallest circle. So circle number 1, which is our smallest circle, outside track. And you should be able to get a total of 4 of these if you want. But by cutting with the blue blade, that's going to let me come in with the red blade to actually cut my photos. And that's going to give me a nice chunky mat. But I'm only going to do 2. I know I probably won't use more than 2 of the circle mats on there. And then I have this piece still left, and that's going to be plenty of room to still kind of build that frame around those center pieces. All right, so we are through the first row of directions. Now we're going to move on to our background papers. As I mentioned before, this cut with the back for the background papers is completely optional. You do not need to cut out this piece if you feel like that's a step that you don't want to take with your trimmer. You're unsure of cutting something like that, you can skip it. The biggest thing is going to be is I will be able to use the piece that I pull out. I can flip it over and use that for some mats. So that's going to be, for me, going to be a great option and a great efficient use of paper. So we're going to be making a C cut, and it just because it looks like a C. Off of our sides of our paper, we're going to be leaving a 3-inch section on each side and 1.5 at the top. So I'm going to rotate my trimmer so that it is sitting perpendicular to me. I'm going to start off with the 3-inch cut, meaning I'm going to put my paper. Now, if you are using directional paper, my paper is non-directional. It doesn't matter which way I go. If you're using directional paper, your top edge of your paper needs to be over here on this side, on the right. The top edge is over here. I'm going to put this in at 3 inches. So I'm going to find my 3. And then I need to come in 1.5 inches on each side. So I'm going to, here's my 1.5 inches here, and I will line up my white line. We'll come over at 1.5 inches, and I'm going to cut all the way over to 10.5. If you need to use binder clips, you can definitely set those in place. So I'm going to start at 1.5, line up that white line, and then you just press. This is an inside cut. 1.5 all the way over to 10.5. And I'm 3 inches from the edge. Remember, this is my top of my paper. Now what I'll do is I'll rotate this. My 3-inch piece is over here on the left. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this in and put this down at 1.5 inches. And close. Now this piece, I'm going to actually start it at 9 inches, and I can kind of see where my cut piece is lining up on my trimmer, and that should be at 9 inches. And that's where I'm going to line up my white line. Make sure you stay at 1.5 above the cut, or above your cut line. You're 1.5 inches above the cut line. My blade is over here. The white line is at 9. I'm going to cut all the way over to the right. Now what I can do is I can actually just push my paper up. I'm just going to inch it up, and I'm going to line this up at 1.5 inches below my cut line. So I can still see a little bit down here. 1.5. And again, coming back over to the 9 inches, and I'm going to cut all the way over, and I've got my first C cut. There's my reverse. So this is my left page. If you've got directional paper, you can see how this is going to sit over on this side. It's my left page sits over here. Now I need to make my right page. If you've got directional paper, I want you to set it here so that you can see. Make sure if you have directional paper, here would be your top edge. Keep track of where your top edge, or use a Post-it note if you need to. Basically, what I need to remember is over here is my 3-inch edge. I can do this right. This is my 3-inch side. I've got my 3-inch side over here. Here's my 3-inch side. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my paper, put it in. My 3-inch side is over here with my Post-it note. I'm going to line this up at 3 inches and repeat the same cuts I did before. starting at 1.5 inches, coming over to 10.5. Rotate my paper. Now my 3-inch piece is over here on my left. If you've got your pattern paper, right now your design is upside down. The top is actually at the bottom if you've got directional paper. This edge is going to be placed at 1.5 inches above the cut line. Close your trimmer, line your blade up at the 9. Again, that's where I can see the slit in my paper, and go ahead and cut all the way to the right. Pull your paper back through, line up at 1.5 inches below the cut line, and repeat that same cut starting at 9 inches, pulling all the way to the right. So there we go. There is our background pieces. These will be set aside for mats. And these background pieces can be set aside for the moment. The next pieces of paper we're going to be cutting are actually the pieces that sit on here as that background. We will put our bats on there, and then we're going to come in with that little bit. See how you can start to see how it's going to take shape. We need to cut out this square here. Now, one of the things that's on my original layout is I do have some accent details, some stripes. These stripes, these lavender stripes, are the back side of the smiley face paper. So that's why I have on this piece that we have a bunch of little pieces that we're going to cut. If you don't want those accent pieces, if you want to use a different color, you just need to cut out a 9 3/4 inch square. If you want those accent pieces, and I'm going to take a peek, again, they're kind of the light purple. I'll go ahead and cut them. It's like a grayish purple. I'll cut them out just to stick with this cut guide, and you can see, and I may or may not add them. Maybe I'll add something else. I don't know. So I'm going to cut both pieces of paper the same way. I'm not going to cut them at the same time though, just because there's some pretty thin cuts and I like to have more control, make sure I'm cutting them correctly. I have a non-directional paper, so I'm not too worried about which way it goes. I'm going to cut 2 1/2 inch strips and then 2 1/4 inch strips. So 2 strips that are 1/2 inch each. They're 1/2 inch by 12. And I'm going to do 2 of them that are 1/4 inch each. And these will flip over and actually use the purple side. Remember, the 1/4 inch is actually the edge of that gray line. The strips don't really matter. You just want them to be even. So it may not be the perfect 1/4 inch, but as long as you're using the same reference point, they'll match. And that's the important part. All right, so I have my 1/2 inch strips and I have my 1/4 inch strips. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut my 9 3/4 inch square. So I'm going to come over here, 9 3/4 inch. This piece here is scrap. Rotate my paper and cut it at 9 3/4 inch again. This piece is also scrap, and there's my square. Now I'll repeat the same cuts with this second piece, starting with those 1/2 inch strips. 2 1/2 inch strips, 2 1/4 inch strips. I'm going to line this up at 9 3/4 inches. That's scrap. Rotate 90 degrees. Trim at 9 3/4 as again. Now I can go ahead, I'm gonna put my trimmer away for now. We're gonna assemble the main part of the layout. So the easiest way I found to do this was actually to take these 9 3/4 inch squares and adhere them to my punched half frames. So what I can do is I can come in, I can put some adhesive on the outside edges. I'm gonna grab, I think I'm gonna use my mini. And really what I'm trying to do here is I just want to make sure I should be able to have everything show. I'm at the very, very bottom of my bat tails. I guess they have tails, right? Little tails. They're like flying rodents in a way, aren't they? I'm just looking for some nice consistency there. Yeah, that looks really good. So I've adhered it here. You can see I just adhered this to my frame. Now what I'm going to do is when I put this on my piece, I'm just going to put this all down as one piece lining up here on this edge. This is the inside edge of my left page, and I'm looking for it to be flush and center. So there's no measurements involved. You're pretty much just looking to be centered top to bottom, and over here should be flush along that edge. So let me go ahead. I'm going to put some repo adhesive along my bats, my decorative edge. And if I want to come in with some regular adhesive, should be able to come up here and add some of these in like such. I'll probably come back and add some additional adhesive along these two edges. I'll put some more of the thin, the mini. I love the mini. I just sometimes feel like I don't use it as much as I should. And again, as I mentioned before, really what I'm wanting to do is I'm looking to be flush along this inside edge, and then just taking a peek over here to make sure top to bottom looks good. That looks really nice. And go ahead and put it in place. Now I'm going to repeat that on the other side. Coming back to my piece of paper. Now this one's going to be even easier to do because I've got all this space. I didn't cut out those circles. So I have lots of room to do all of my adhering. In fact, I am just going to go ahead and put a bunch of just some adhesive in here. Grab my square. And it gets layered in here the same. For me, I'm just pretty much using those tails of the bat to help me make sure I get everything lined up. Feels like a little bit of an adhesive medley here, just using pretty much everything. I just need to grab the glue pen, and I think I've worked well on some tape chips maybe. I mean, what else other adhesives haven't I used? Oh, I'm at the end of my tape runner. My mini, I don't have another one out here. We'll just put some adhesive repo on.
Will Cody dress up again this year?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we probably have a couple more years out of him for that. We need to actually need to, the problem we're running into is that getting those, costumes for him is a little bit difficult because he's just so tall. He's tall and skinny, so I think we can still maybe squeeze into like the youth 12s, but it's, in all honesty, I think those are a little short for him. All right. So there's the main part of the layout, right? We've got our background. So from here, now it's just a matter of adding the elements that you want to add to this. So we can take a peek at what it would look like if I were to add the little border strips. I have a thicker one and then a narrower one. And maybe I might come in with, make them two-toned. I didn't like that on the other one because the other paper, that smiley face one, I didn't like, it didn't look good over on the side. But this being two-tone, I think actually I'm going to like that. So I'm going to have the thicker stripe be that more that gray lavender color. And then come in with that orange to pop that orange over on the side. And then what you'll do is you have these other pieces here. These are all going to get cut in half at 6 inches. I line them up. They actually get cut smaller than 6 inches, so I'm not too concerned about the accuracy of my 6 inches. I just want them roughly that size. And then they get placed at the top. And I will need to cut them off after you've put them in. And of course, you can add them if you want. You can leave them off if you don't want that detail. If you want to punch another border, like I was even thinking you could come in with the double rickrack would be cute, or another very basic punch, like if you have the old rickrack, or just go with one piece of paper, whatever your heart desires there. Do what makes you happy, and you don't have to put them on at all. This would actually be a good spot if you wanted to come in with your title. You could also use some stickers there. All right, so the next thing I want to show is I want to go into the little bit of details of showing you how to cut the mats. So down here is an optional where we're going to cut out 4x5 mats from our 9-inch square. So the piece that we cut out from our background piece is a 9-inch square. So we're going to do the magic mats. And these are really kind of a nifty technique. I don't know how many of you have ever done the magic mats, where basically you're trying to be as efficient as possible to get mats out of your square paper. So I can get 4x5 mats, but I can't cut them like in a square. If I were to cut them in a square, I'm going to have 4.5 inch square pieces. Now, to be fair, if you want to go simple, just put it on like this, right? You've got some options here, and then put your photos on. But I want some mats. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and take my 9-inch square. I know that a 9-inch square will get me a 4x5 mat out of the magic mat system, because 4 plus 5 is 9. That tells me that a 9-inch square I can do as long as my two lengths equal 9 or equal my square size. I can get the mats out of there. Now I'm going to line this up at 4 inches above my cut. So here's my cut line down here. I am up at 4 inches flush over here on the logo side. Close your trimmer. I'm going to bring my white line here to the 5 inches. So there's my 4 by 5. I'm going to start my cut at 5 inches, pull all the way to the right. Rotate your paper 90 degrees clockwise or to the right, line it back up at 4. And I'm going to repeat that cut starting at 5. And you just keep working around in a clockwise rotation, lining up at 4 inches, cutting at 5. This works with other size of papers, depending on what size of mat. If you want a 4.5 by 6.5-inch mat, like you think of a mat that would have a nice chunky mat on a 4x6, you have to use an 11-inch paper square, because 4.5 plus 6.5 equals 11. If you want to get a bunch of 5x7s out of a 12x12, you do the same concept. You just use line up at 5, cut at 7. But that would take a 12x12 because 5 plus 7 is 12. A little bit of math for your Tuesday evening. All right, I'm going to repeat this. I'm lining up at 4 inches, cutting at 5. Rotate to the right and just keep doing that. The nice thing I like about this, even in my original layout, I did not use 4x5 mats for all of my photos. I actually trimmed some down to 4x4 squares, but at least I have the option of as much mat as I can out of my paper. The only part that I have left that's waste is these 2 little squares. Tessa's like, I love math as much as I love cutting paper. Yeah, I would say, but you know what I really love is fractions. Oh, fractions. So delightful. So let me just put these on. I'm not going to worry about the little ones yet. I just want to show you guys real quick some options. This is your playground at this point. You can put your photos on here however you want. What is nice is you do have the option to come in with that lovely pinwheel configuration. I mean, that's what we cut it with. But now instead of having that big mat, I've got a pinwheel configuration. And then over here, if you want, you don't have to use the pinwheel configuration. Depending on what you need out of your space, you can bring in your circles. So as I mentioned, you can do whatever you want here, and it's going to come into however the decoration. So this would be really cute if I really, oh my gosh, you guys, if I wanted to really get adventuresome and I can find bats that I didn't cut, I could come around my circles with bats. I'm not saying that I will, but I'm just saying that I could come in with the bats. I do think I have some pretty good definition here. This is probably, could have paid a little bit more attention if I felt like I needed to come in underneath this and accent those bats. I could definitely have done so. That's something that I probably should have paid a little bit more close attention to, but you've got some little options to play with there. So hopefully you guys are inspired, have some options there to see what you want to do. And I'm seeing in this chat now, like this way you can like tag people. That's kind of interesting. So yeah, Kimberly's saying I could punch some silver bats, and I could just punch some silver bats and I could fill those in. That is an option too, to come in, is to just add those. And again, the adhesive glue pen is kind of to our rescue there to put little dabs. Remember, if you do use the adhesive pen, it goes on kind of that milky blue color. Let it dry completely. It will dry clear and tacky. So then, especially with these little things like the bats, because they're so tiny, if you have adhesive on the back of it and you push it down, or maybe you put a little dab on your paper, if you put it down right away, that liquid's going to just come out from underneath the bat, and it's going to be a little bit of a mess. If you let that dry, it'll stay nice and tacky, and you can use like your lifter stick and put your little bat on there, and none of the adhesive will run because it will have dried tacky. All right. So that's what we have for you guys tonight. I have no idea when we're doing the October Power Hour. We both have fall break. When is your fall break the same week as my fall break? No, you're the week after me. So we're probably going to do it the week after my retreat, after your fall break, Tessa. You think so? Probably. Yeah, we'll have to.
Probably the 21st.
Probably. It'll be a little bit later. It is also our birthday month for Meggan and Tessa. It was hard to believe, but 5 years ago when we started, I know we're all like, what? 5 years ago in October of 2020, Tessa and I had our first Make and Take together. We did Wickedly Cute. So I'm not sure. We'll have to have like a little fun celebration. We'll see whether Tessa, I'll have to find some cute little 5-year-old decorations to send her way, maybe a cute little crown for the queen's head. And she can wear those things. I cannot. My head is ginormous. I don't want to say her head is small, but it is smaller than mine. So it will be where she is much easier for her to wear those. I put those things on and they start to hurt. So, but we'll get that out to you guys. We'll confirm that date tonight and try to get that in on the email that goes out tomorrow. So you guys have that. And what other kind of fun stuff? Oh, Sandy's saying she was there for the first power hour. Yes. Last year was that last year that we had a little bit of a trivia thing with our birthday power hour. We'll have to see whether we can come up with some. How well do you know your power hours? Which I really hope that they don't quiz us, because there are times when I can't even remember what I made last month. I'm not, does that happen to you, Tessa? You have to think really long and hard. Like, what did I do last month? So,
Yeah, I find
um,
the layouts on my desk. I'm like, oh yeah, it's all new again.
it's all new again. Heather is right. We have Croptoberfest this Thursday. That is our free Croptoberfest project workshop. We're going to be putting together the layouts that Creative Memory has as part of the project recipe kit and the project bundle. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's on Thursdays during the day, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. It is recorded. So if you are registered for that, you will get that recording to your inbox. If you are not registered, it is still not too late to do so. But the everything that you need for that is all part of the project recipe kit, is also part of the the project bundle, and all of those handouts are included. We do not have handouts to send out for that. So if you have not gotten your Oktoberfest materials, you can still get them from Creative Memories. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else significant coming up. We will be
Tomorrow, I'm
doing,
going to announce the summer scrap drawing winners
oh,
finally.
yes, the summer scrap winners, that those ladies have been and gentlemen have been so patiently waiting to have those announcements made. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then speaking of our scrap challenge, we will have another one starting up in January, our winter frolic. Registration will probably open a little bit later in November. So look for that then. We don't open it too early because, we're not working that far in advance. But we will have it. So that will be very exciting. Looking forward to that in 2026. All right, everybody. We really appreciate you guys joining us. And we will see, I hope, many of you on Thursday. If not, we will see you, catch you in October at our birthday party. I don't know what we want to call it. Do we get to have cake? That's all I ask. I want to have cake. So, all right. Take care, everyone. We'll see you all soon.